Well, welcome back to the video course. Are you having fun? Are you learning anything? In this chapter, we're going to talk about what did you think, Brad? Was that pretty official sounding or what?
That was very
I was saying, I think, I wonder if I'm throwing Brad off right now. Is he going to forget all of his lines? But honestly, this chapter is a really good one, actually. How will you finish your book? And we titled this chapter very deliberately because we don't want to say how will you start your book, how will you write your book. We want to make sure, I'm going to talk about this later as well, we want to make sure that you actually finish this thing, you get this thing done. And right now we're going to give you some suggestions on how to create the book, the creation process, right through to the completion step. And there's a number of different ways that you may choose to write your book, and you'll likely implement a combination of the things we're going to suggest here, or you might even come up with some of your own ideas. But writing your book doesn't have to be, as I mentioned earlier, as complex as sitting down with a typewriter and tapping the keys for hours and days and months on end until you can finally see the end of the road. You can get a book done very, very quickly. And actually, that'll be a side question here, Brad, because I want to know exactly how much time you spent on yours. But I know you spent a lot less time writing your book than a lot of people because of the process you used. And what was that process?
for me the process was I used Dragon Dictate, which is a dictation software you can buy for Mac or PC, and it takes about 20 minutes to train the software to get used to your voice and your accent and the way you pronounce certain words that are specific to different regions. Once you get through that initial training, it's about 95% accurate. So you could sit there and speak out what you want your book to say, and it's amazing how fast paragraphs get filled when you're talking. you know, Typing is for me anyway. This is maybe different for everybody, but typing for me has never been something that I love. The keyboard, as we know, was never really designed for efficient typing. It was actually the QWERTY keyboard setup was designed to slow down receptionists in the days when typewriters would get jammed when they were used too fast. They were actually designed them to be inefficient, and so I'm not a fan of inefficiency at all. But I'm also not a fan of learning a new keyboard. So I really like dictating into software because I see my words appear on screen. I can instantly edit them if I have a problem with how something looks. But it also is a very fast way. I mean, we're doing these for a reason. I'm very good at talking, not very good at writing. So I like to see my words transform into paragraphs very quickly using that type of software, and it definitely, for me personally, allows me a lot more words per minute than typing would ever allow.
Yeah, and so on that, just as a sort of a curiosity question, how long do you think you actually spent writing your book? It was a couple hundred pages, right? A couple
I
hundred page book?
40 to 60 hours writing a book in total actual hours.
Wow. Which is, in some cases, that's like a week of work for some people. Like, in fact, most people work at least 60 hours a week. So people, if you think that a book is this massive, multi-month project, maybe you want to look at dictation software, do what Brad did. And I find a lot of people are actually better at speaking than they might give themselves credit for. Although, Brad, I think, to be fair, you can speak your thoughts and your ideas easier than some people. And other people might find it really easy. And I kind of wanted to use it as to bring up another point here. Another suggestion is dictation is a great way of doing it, but a lot of people would get their dictation software and then they hit record and then now they don't know what to say, and that can be a problem. And I know I've certainly struggled with that as a speaker, as somebody who creates products as well. I sometimes need some additional fuel or inspiration or something to trigger my mind. And another suggestion we're going to give you here is if you want to do the dictation thing, if you want to speak a lot of your book into existence, but you don't know where to start, consider getting interviewed. Consider having one or two or even three different people, maybe from different worlds, three different people that have different backgrounds, ask you questions about your topic. Again, even if you're doing the whole researcher thing here, if you're not just the expert specifically yourself, the book is something you're going to know. You're going to know this topic. You're going to be able to speak about the topics. If somebody interviews you, kind of like we're doing on this call or on these videos here, Brad. I'm starting off each chapter with a question. I do a little intro, then I flip it over to you with a question again, and you answer it, and soon enough we have a product, right? So there's no real secret or mystery here, but if somebody just asks you questions and stimulates your mind, you're going to tap into all of your ideas, all of your best suggestions, and you're going to do it from it's going to be your gut reaction. It's going to be your first instinct, and it's usually the best answer. Usually your best content comes out of that. So having somebody interview you could be the difference between having no book written and having an entire book completed. And I know, Brad, you and I get interviewed a lot. Some of my best content, I'll ask that person. I'll say, that was a great interview you just did with me. Can you send me that, please? And I'll give it to my project manager to transcribe it, so I have some of my best thoughts in writing now. And I never would have had those if somebody didn't interview me.
Totally. Yeah, it's a great way to distill the content, because you won't think of the questions to ask yourself, but someone whose job it is to ghostwrite your content, they will, and they'll, as you talk, they'll come up with new questions for you, and it certainly makes it easier if you're not inclined to do that yourself.
Yeah, and actually on that note, you just mentioned the word ghostwriting, which is another process here. In your case, Brad, you dictated the book. It became a document because of the software, and you had the skills and the team in place to put it into an actual written format, to do the editing and so on. If you don't, hiring a ghostwriter is a very wise move, and we could probably even give you a couple places to look here, but before we do that, consider doing this. A lot of people are initially turned off by the idea of having a ghostwriter do the work for them, but this is the embodiment of working smarter instead of harder. If somebody can interview you, or if you can dictate all of your thoughts into an audio, even if it's just into audio, having a ghostwriter take that and write your thoughts into a book is a great way to hack that process, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you want anything to add, but I know for sure some of the places we've used in the past are Elance. I think Odesk has quite a few writers. Are there any specific spots you go to, Brad? I mean, you and I have our own personal contacts to many writers just because we've been in business for a number of years. There's some public places you can go to get writers. Elance and Odesk for sure.
WriteSwap.com is a site that I'm a co-owner in, that still has some great writers on it today. Beworker is another good place. Even Craigslist,
That's right. Yeah, Craigslist is a good one.
Really talented writers out there that are not working. Lots of newspapers have closed down. There are people out there who are working in a fast food place who used to write for your local newspaper before they went bankrupt, and they would gladly do side work for you. And so go to Craigslist, go to some of these places, and think outside the box. There's a lot of deals to be had on ghostwriters in this day and age. You and I see it all the time. There's so many out of work writers right now and
they're good,
and they're amazing. But their own issue is that they're not necessarily creative enough to come up with their own ideas for content. They need
an assignment, yeah,
or mercenaries. They need to be need to work for hire. So you give them the idea and some leadership, and they create the content for you.
Yeah, no, it's a great way of getting it done. And just sort of one other final thought here. It kind of ties into the whole idea of dictating your book or getting interviewed and then taking that content, having somebody ghostwrite it for you to save time. It's the idea of mind mapping. Now, you might be rolling your eyes saying, I hear mind mapping all the time, but truth is a lot of people don't. And I resisted mind mapping for the longest time.
Me too.
And I'll just give you an example. I'm right now in the middle of planning or about to leave on a really long trip. I'm going to be gone for up to 5 weeks, maybe even 6. And I've got a business to run. And we've taken our family. So there's lots of stuff that goes into it. There's, getting your house ready and have different assignments I need to give to my staff, and on it goes. So I literally mind mapped the other day all the different things that were on my mind to make me feel at ease. And what was so cool about the process was I started with Free Mind software, which anybody can download free, and I just started putting little bubbles on things that were on my mind in no particular order. And before I knew it, everything that I knew I needed to get done before my trip, which is a pretty big undertaking, was in front of me, and I could break it into chunks or into steps. And that might be all you need to start that very important momentum phase, and you need momentum to get a book going, but just doing a mind map might be all you need to get this thing going. So that might be something, if you're stuck or if you haven't been able to come up with your idea for your book yet, try doing a mind map. Mind map some of the things that are you're most passionate about in this particular category that you want to write about, and see what comes out. That could be all you need to then start dictating, or all you need to find somebody to interview you and get going.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more, and I think that the power behind having everything in front of you, it's easy to talk about, and like you said, I was the same way. I resisted mind maps for the longest time, but now I realize that it's just a way to organize your thoughts, and it allows you to get all of your ideas onto a document, and that way you don't forget anything. And that's, I think, one of the biggest problems people deal with is overwhelm, right? It's like, oh, there's just so many steps and so many things I have to remember and think about, and well, that's why you have a mind map, right? The mind map will help you to figure out that process and create a checklist that you can follow, where as you think of things, they get added to the document and they don't get forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely a strong recommendation there. If you haven't tried it yet, definitely get on that. That is the conclusion of video 5, and we'll see you hopefully just in a moment for video 6.